Hello guys and welcome back. It is officially the start of week 4. Super happy to be with you guys today, sharing how the process is going. So hopefully you can hear in my voice, I am 100% past that sickness that was kind of a doozy there for a minute. It started in episode 2, I think, and then it hung around even longer in episode 3. Here we are, finally past it. And to be honest, a lot of people say, like, and I believe this, but when you're sick, you do need to let your body rest. And I did, but I was like getting to the point where I needed to be productive. I needed to get up and do things I loved, which was go to the gym and do work that I really love doing. And so I really attribute that to helping me to get to the other side and feel better, which is funny because one of my favorite YouTubers, she literally, I think this last week I watched one of her episodes and she went through the exact same thing. And she said almost word for word what I was telling my partner Jay. And she was saying, I felt like I needed to get up and I needed to be productive. And then like the next episode, she was also feeling better. So it's so funny, like the, like-mindedness and the connections of the people that, we resonate with. So yes, heading into week 4, feeling recovered from last week. So on Friday, I think it was, I shared with you guys in the previous episode that it was Saturday. So I had trained on Friday. Saturday, I woke up and was like, oh, my teres minor kind of is not feeling so hot after benching the day before. So I took the day to do cardio. I took my refeed days, Saturday and Sunday. And today, I'm so happy I made that decision. I knew that was the right choice. And my back is feeling 100% fine. I could feel as I was getting more calories in me on Saturday and Sunday that was helping the situation. I wanted to kick off this week with kind of piggybacking off of that conversation we had last week around doubts and kind of stressors that were coming up for me in week 3. We kind of hit that first patch of sort of bumpy terrain. So I did some meditation this weekend and just allowed myself to reflect on, where is this stress kind of coming from? And it kind of boils down to, I was feeling like this game plan that Alberto gave me was a little bit too structured, too much like having to stay in the lines. And that I do really well personally based on my life experiences and all of the context that has led me to this point. I do really well with having that sense of freedom. Like I can kind of like ebb and flow and follow my intuition, if you will. So I know this because I have gone through other dieting phases, as we've talked about before, and specifically my third cut I did in 2021, I worked with Team Loco Fit, which some of you may be familiar. That's Lauren Conlon's company. And I worked with one of the coaches on her team, and her name is Karina Naboa. I'll maybe reference her somehow because Karina is amazing, and we've done a podcast together. So I'll link that below in the description for you guys. But Karina was amazing working together because she really listened to me, and we had a relationship, and so she kind of was familiar with my story and again the context of where I was at in that point in time when I came to her with my dieting goals. And so she really helped create a plan that would facilitate wins for me and lead me in a positive direction. And that plan encapsulated, is that the right word? Encompassed is probably a better word. It encompassed a lot of flexibility. We had a lot of intuitive eating days throughout the process, and within those so I guess if you're not familiar, an intuitive eating day means you just get to eat what you want. to a place where you feel like full and satisfied. So it's like a refeed day, but a refeed day typically is tracked. You're tracking it in your, food tracking app on your phone. Whereas an intuitive day, you're just eating whatever you desire. So we had that, and there was flexibility in how many intuitive days I would take per week. Typically 1 to 3 was a good kind of frequency for me. So as I was reflecting and doing some meditation around this like stress that was sort of brewing up inside of me, I realized, okay, like this process, as I talked about in episode 1, is for me to learn more about myself. It's not to execute the plan on paper that Alberto gave me perfectly and to do exactly what he says. Like, obviously, the more you can adhere is generally going to be better. But what I've learned through my coaching practice over the years is the most important thing is what you can actually adhere to. Not what's on paper, but what you enjoy doing, what's going to challenge you without overwhelming you. And so I'm really shifting my focus here in week 4 to kind of remember this wisdom, I suppose, that I tell my clients too. It's not about being perfect. It's about being practical and realistic with what you actually can adhere to, because it's going to be what is sustainable. As I reflected on that, it actually led me back to looking at the program that Berto gave me. And he gave me some general guidelines. We have like the black and white, the numbers, but then his notes, his coaching notes said, the goal of this process is to feel fresh in this fat loss phase compared to previous fat loss phases, which I will dive into that a little bit more here in a second. And the second thing is to feel in control most of the time. So when I read those, I was like, okay, yeah, like I can kind of take these like really rigid guardrails, maybe that were in my mind, off of the process and have a little bit more like freedom and flexibility. So like I said, what that might look like for me if and when I feel I need it throughout this process is, instead of being so rigid with I have to take my refeed days Saturdays and Sundays, maybe I'll throw a refeed day in on a Wednesday and then maybe my other one on a Saturday or a Sunday, so that I just have a little bit more flexibility and can flow as I feel needed. The other thing would be, instead of, as I've already mentioned, instead of tracking the refeed day, possibly doing it untracked, if that just helps to lower stress. Because really that's the biggest thing for me, is if I can find ways to not have to be so perfectionist about the process, that will lower stress for me, and I know that helps me to thrive in the process. And with all of this said, the goal of this fat loss process is definitely to see how I would do if there were a stage at the end. But the like ultimate goal for me is to make sure I maintain a positive relationship with the process and continue to enjoy it, so that I do adhere to it and so that it's sustainable for the long term. The reason I say all that is because I did a pretty aggressive diet my second ever cut back in 2015 to 2016. It ended up being about a 14-month fat loss phase. There were diet breaks kind of woven into that process, but the diet breaks still had a lot of rigidity around them. And I would just say it felt like my foot was like pretty down into that top gear a lot of the time. And so just like I told you guys in episode 1, I'm sharing this journey because there was so much I learned throughout that second cut that I'm talking about that has informed me of how I'm going about this cut, as well as there's been so much I've learned from that cut until now, which again informs how I do this process. Without going into like too much detail, it was successful in and of itself. But then once I got to the end of that 14-month process, And again, there's always so much context, right? So not only was I pursuing a long duration fat loss phase, but my training at the time was very mentally taxing. I was working multiple jobs and like had pretty high responsibility and kind of stress from those jobs. So it was just a lot of variables and things on my plate. And so essentially when I got to the end of that 14-month process, I was like, I don't really like to train that much right now. I was pretty burnt out on it, unfortunately. I did not want to track my macros, and I still needed to go through the like recovery aspect of the diet, and I wanted to have that be a little bit more seamless than it actually went. But because I had like pushed so far on the front end of the diet, kind of coming out of it was a little bumpy. And yeah, it was just like, I was very like, I just needed to go into a completely like intuitive method of eating after that 14th month journey. So over the next 5 years, actually, I pretty much just intuitively ate, did not track my food at all, which was fine. Like, that's what I needed to do. But if I would have known then what I know now, and which is why I'm kind of shifting gears a little bit here, where I'm at currently in my process, is that, it's not about getting to that end weight within the time frame you think it might. It's more so making sure the process feels good and you're enjoying it, so that you can keep stacking W's and keep moving in a positive direction towards progress, rather than overdoing it and then having to, like I said, take so much time away from the goals that you most want because you like were pedal to the metal and in full like white knuckling mode to those goals. So with all of that said, I'm keeping in mind the context of where I am now in my process. And I'm keeping in consideration, I've already been 11-ish weeks into a cut and then a 3-week diet break. So I'm continuing this 4th cut for the next like 16 weeks. So I think that puts me around like 30 weeks total that I will potentially be in this cut for. And that's like, so long as I have the freedom and flexibility that I was mentioning earlier, that I do implement that in this process, I foresee that 30 weeks will be fine. And I don't even have to go 30 weeks if, again, more like of these kind of like overwhelm episodes come up and I feel like, this is just not smart to keep pushing towards this. I need to, again, make some adjustments. Because ideally, my trajectory, I will be dropping to 132, 140 pounds by the end of this cut. And that will be kind of my new maintenance where I will hang out at, so that I can go into a building phase from there, recover, eat back at my maintenance calories, train, and make sure all of my training feels really good, feels really strong, more strength work, more hypertrophy work, more conditioning, the rest of 2023. So that come 2024, if I did want to potentially get on stage and jump into another fat loss phase, I will have maintained a really positive relationship with the process throughout this entire portion and, doing this part right, so that the off season, that building phase I talked about, that goes right, so that the next fat loss phase goes right, rather than burning out in this process, having to take time away and like, I don't know the right word, balance everything back out, and then have to wait another 5 years to kind of pursue my goals again. I know this is a little bit longer start of the week update, but I just thought it would be really helpful for me to share with you guys, because this is like years of learning for me. So the lessons are very rich, and I figured you guys could benefit from those as well. The other thing I'm keeping in mind, like the context of where I'm at in this process, I successfully completed about, I would say, like a 20-ish week cut in 2021. Like I was mentioning with Karina, with Team Loco Fit. But I did not really share that process on social media. I just wanted to do the work for myself, build that confidence, prove to myself I could do it, and put that win in my pocket. And then I started, like I said, this 11-week cut back in 2022, so at the very end of 2022. And I wasn't sharing much of that process either, because that one I had started without a coach, and I just wanted to, again, build that confidence, get some W's in my pocket that I can handle this on my own and it will, be successful. And it was. And then I reached out to Berto, and then I just felt like, you know what, I can share this process with you guys. But it's important to remember that talking about this process and sharing about it, that's also like, it can build fatigue, because it's just more of your attention, your time, your energy is focused on that goal. And so I'm keeping that in mind throughout this process of like, how often I share and just how much I am giving it, being honest with myself of how much I can actually give and still obviously accomplish the fat loss goal, and just do it in a way that it's all sustainable. So not overextending myself, I think, is the best way to put it. So I will get you guys another update probably in a couple days here. I just wanted to start us off with kind of a lot of insight after my meditation and some time for reflection, and kind of let you know where I'm at going into week 4. Detroit. So we are taking off tomorrow morning for the Bahamas, and I wanted to just get one more update to you guys for the week, kind of round things out how the full week of weigh-ins went. I was really happy because I averaged, sorry, this chair is a little squeaky. I averaged around 149 for the week. I have a physical scale with like the dial rather than digital, so it can be hard to tell exactly like where I landed. But I don't like to read into it too much, because I think it can become too obsessive where it's controlling you rather than you controlling it. But I could tell that the trend was going downward for the week. And keep in mind, I am coming up on my period, so that is probably a little bit high of where I'm actually sitting. So we were planning to get Mancino's on the way to Detroit for dinner. And I Googled it before to make sure it was open, because some of them have shut down, if you're familiar with the chain of Mancino's. And they said they were open till 8. We literally pull into the strip mall that it's in, and there's like 6 other businesses in the strip, mind you. Literally no one is in the parking lot. I was like, shit. So we ended up not getting Mancino's, which is a little bit of a bummer because I was actually really craving it. But it kind of worked out, because though I'm like sort of starting my diet break today, tomorrow is technically like the structure I've been following for taking my refeed days. So Saturday, Sunday. So I was like, Mancino's probably would have put me above what my like low day calories actually are. And so we ended up going to Culver's instead, and I got the cashew chicken salad, which highly recommend if you are a Culver's fan. I really love the taste. And then this is actually a grapefruit kombucha, which is super tasty. I love the like citrusy, I don't know, like vibrant, crisp taste. So that works out because that kind of, I'm happy to end this week with fitting my low day and then starting my diet break tomorrow with like my refeed day. I'm like I said before in the previous episodes, I'm not going to engorge myself while I'm on vacation. My body's adapted to a certain calorie like goal and range right now. So I'm just going to eat to satisfaction. I mean, some days if we do go out to restaurants, I won't deprive myself of like trying new foods and sampling things, but I think it'll be a really nice week of just not tracking and then lowering stress because of that and having a little bit more food freedom. So yeah, that worked out. As far as training, I was really proud of myself for auto-regulating my training this week. Let's see, last week I was starting to feel the effects of the diet on my training. And it's hard to say, like this week, my training, I didn't feel as beat up during it, but I also kind of scaled back the volume on some days because of just different life situations. Like I had more workload on my plate for POA this week. I had more on my plate prepping for the Bahamas of like figuring out what to pack, figuring out, what are things I need to make sure get done before we are gone for a week. Things like that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pull back on volume. It's also my last week of my training block before my deload week, which happens to fall right when we're in the Bahamas. So that works out perfectly. So I was okay with like not totally pushing as hard as I would have normally this past week, knowing that it's just more time for recovery. Next week, I'll be even more recovered, and then I'll come back into my next block feeling really fresh and ready to go. I also mentioned last week that I was starting to feel more stressors pop up and doubt of like, is this going to be, more intimidating than I think? And just feeling a little bit more nervous and apprehensive. And I have to say that this past week, the diet felt like a breeze. It felt like my body is probably adapting to this lower calorie goal, which is a good thing and not. Like, yes, when you become adapted to a calorie range or number, you're not going to feel the hunger as much, which is nice. But then also like, okay, now your body is able to survive off of lower calories, which of course is going to happen during a diet. And will adjust once you go back to maintenance and you'll be able to eat more again and your body will be okay. But yeah, obviously like not eating a ton of calories, you don't want to be in that state for a super long period of time and having your body adapted to that low calorie goal. But yeah, with that said, it did make things feel a little easier this week. And I think just being busier with work and doing things I really enjoy kept me more occupied. So I would like kind of forget about eating at times, which that can be very helpful when you're in a diet, and not in like a, I don't know, not in a bad way, but yeah, just enjoying what you're doing. So with that said, is there anything else? So I will not be recording while I am in the Bahamas. I apologize if you guys were hoping to see footage down there, but I really just want to take time to enjoy with the people around me and not be on a phone and, have my face in a screen. So I will obviously take pictures. I might record some clips, but then put them in the following episode. So you'll see some stuff eventually, I'm sure, but not like a full vlog's worth of just doing things in the Bahamas. So Thank you guys again so much for tuning in to episode number 5? 4? 5? I honestly don't remember. This week, I told you I worked a lot this week, which was great, but now my brain is like, is this, what week are we in? And I've also been considering, like, okay, I was saying that this is like week 4 or 5 of dieting, but I was doing like 11 weeks of a cut prior to starting this YouTube series, and then I took a 3-week diet break at maintenance. So now I'm like, do I include that in, like, do I add those weeks to this? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll let you know in next episode. But if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit the thumbs up, like this video, hit that subscribe button wherever it is on the screen to subscribe so you can follow along as I continue going in this series and sharing this process with you all. And be sure to hit the bell to turn notifications on so you can be updated each time I share a new vlog. Again, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care.